Class of Analyzing Ethernet LAN switching. In this class today, we are going to discuss about LAN switching concept. A modern Ethernet LAN connects the user device as well as the servers into some switches, with the switches connecting to each other. To forward traffic from a user device to a server and back, each switch performs some kind of logic which is independent. So the role of a LAN switch is to forward the Ethernet frames. LAN exists as a set of user devices, servers and other devices that connect to the switches, with the switches connected to each other. LAN switch basically has one primary job. This is to forward frames to the correct destination. That means destination is a MAC address. And to achieve that goal, switches use a logic which is based on source and destination MAC address in each frame Ethernet header. So, switch performs some kind of actions, like deciding when to forward a frame and when to filter a frame based on the destination MAC address. Preparing to forward frames by learning MAC addresses by examining the source MAC address of each frame received by the switch. And preparing to forward only one copy of the frame to the destination by creating a loop-free environment with other switches with the help of spanning tree protocol. Now, forwarding known unicast frames. A switch MAC address table lists the location of each MAC relative to that one switch. In LANs with multiple switches, each switch makes an independent forwarding decision based on its own MAC address table. Together they forward the frames so that it eventually arrives at the destination. The frames are called as unicast frames or simply unicast because the destination address is unicast address and the destination is also known. Learning MAC addresses. Switches build the address table by listening to incoming frames and examine the source MAC address in the frame. If a frame enters the switch and the source MAC address is not in the MAC address table, that switch creates an entry in the table. That table entry lists the interface from which the frame arrived. This is switching learning logic. The switch begins with an empty MAC address table which grows at each step. Flooding unknown unicast and broadcast frames. When there is no matching entry in the table, switches forward the frames out all interfaces using a process which is known as flooding. The frame whose destination address is unknown to the switch is called as unknown unicast frame or unknown unicast. Switches flood unknown unicast frames. Flooding means that the switch forward copies of the frame out all ports except the port on which the frame was received. The frame whose destination address is unknown to the switch is called as unknown unicast frame or unknown unicast. Switches also flood LAN broadcast frames because this process helps to deliver a copy of the frame to all devices in the LAN. Avoiding loops using STP. STP as Spanning Tree Protocol. The feature of the LAN switch is loop prevention and it is implemented by STP. Without STP, any flooded frames would loop for an infinite period of time in Ethernet networks with physically redundant links. To prevent looping frames, STP blocks some ports from forwarding frames so that only one active path exists between a LAN segment. Next is Ethernet switches. Switches forward frames based on destination MAC address. If the destination MAC address is broadcast, multicast or unicast, the switch floods the frame. If destination MAC address is known unicast, that means a unicast address found in the MAC address. So it uses the logic to learn the MAC address table. It uses STP to prevent loops. Thank you.